Because while many expected to see a Lewis Hamilton still adapting, uncomfortable and far from the real pace, what happened was exactly the opposite. He set top times, accumulated laps like a metronome, and left a feeling that no one expected so soon. Ferrari may be much closer than it seems. Subscribe to continue uploading more of this type of content now, if we continue. But here comes the truly disturbing thing for his rivals. Hamilton is not comfortable yet. He himself talks about a lack of grip, a demanding car, complex rules, and yet he is up there. So the question is inevitable. What will happen when SF26 gives him exactly what he's asking for? Today we are only going to analyze the third and final day of testing in Bahrain and how it really went for Ferrari, because behind the times there is something much more important, a silent threat that is beginning to take shape. The third day in Bahrain was not a day of spectacle, it was a day of silent confirmations. While many were waiting for a coup d'etat, Ferrari chose something much more dangerous, method. And that's where the story of this surprise really begins. From the first runs of the morning, the SF26 showed a very different face than at the start of the test. It was not an erratic car, it was not an unpredictable car. It was a solid foundation. Hamilton went out on the track, and far from looking for an isolated lap to make headlines, began with long, repeated, almost surgical sequences. The goal was not to impress, it was to understand. And still the times came. That approximate 1 minute and 34.2 seconds in the morning session placed him just a few tenths away from the general reference. But the number itself is not the most relevant thing. What really matters is the context. It was not an attempt to qualify, it was not an empty round with an aggressive motor map. It was part of a work program. More than 50 laps in the morning alone, accumulating kilometers, maintaining a constant pace. That's not coincidence, that's structure. Ferrari had a clear priority on this last day: consolidate the correlation. Repeat slightly different wing and ground configurations, validate on the runway what the tunnel and CFD promised, check that the new parts behaved as expected. There were no dramatic changes, there was no panic in the box, there was no improvisation. The car didn't seem lost. And here appears the first big message of Act 1. Ferrari was not looking for absolute immediate performance, it was building an understood foundation. The reliability accompanied. Practically clean days, without major mechanical shocks, allowing long runs to be chained together, while other teams dealt with small problems. In the pre-season, that is worth gold. Because when you can ride without interruptions, every lap is information, and every block of data reduces uncertainty. But the most interesting contrast of the day was Hamilton's speech versus what the stopwatch was showing. The Briton was critical of the level of grip, describing the sensations as extreme low grip and talking about how demanding the new rules are. I wasn't selling smoke. I wasn't saying everything was perfect. And yet he was up. That means something very concrete. Performance is appearing before the sensations are ideal. At a conceptual level, the SF26 seems like a balanced front-end car with good initial response when entering a curve, something that fits perfectly with Hamilton's aggressive style when attacking the apex. It is not a finished car, but it is one that responds when required. The problem is more in the second half of the curve, in that transition between apex and exit where small changes can make the rear unstable. And even with that partial weakness, the times were there. That is the core of Act 1. Ferrari is still not the most comfortable car, nor the most spectacular, but it is a coherent, healthy, and understandable one. And when a team understands its car in testing, the season begins with an invisible advantage. What we saw on this third day was not a red euphoria. It was something more disturbing for rivals, technical discipline, real progress from one day to the next, and a pilot who's already functioning as a full developer of the project. Because day 3 in Bahrain wasn't just about times, it was about technical consistency. Ferrari arrived with an SF26 in initial specification, but with new parts already visible in this final block of tests. A new front wing was seen with variations in the profile and vortex management in the end plates, along with adjustments to the floor, especially in the floor edge, and in the area near the rear wheels to clean the flow towards the diffuser. They are visually subtle changes, but enormous under regulations where each aerodynamic detail alters the general balance of the car. And the interesting thing is that they were not looking for an immediate boom. They were validating. That's the critical point. Ferrari wasn't desperate for speed. He was making sure that what works in the simulator works on the track. This correlation process was the absolute priority of the last day. When a team trusts its data, subsequent development accelerates exponentially. Now, where is the true hidden potential? Many analyses suggest that the SF26 has a structural advantage in the coherence of the package with the 2026 rules, especially in the management of the new 50/50 electrical distribution. This means that the power delivery is more linear, less abrupt, with less clipping on a straight line. In simple terms, better transition between acceleration and electric deployment without compromising stability. At a circuit like Sakir, where traction and energy efficiency are essential, that is a very strong signal. But this is where Act 2 gets more interesting, because the car isn't perfect. Hamilton was very clear in describing the lack of grip as the lowest he has felt in years. And that has direct implications. Energy management is delicate, stability in the second half of the curve still needs work, and small changes in height or wing can make the exit unstable. In other words, the performance we are seeing is not coming from a comfortable car. And that completely changes the reading. Because if Ferrari is already setting top times with a car that is not yet polished in terms of traction or rear balance, then the room for improvement is real. We are not talking about a car that has already reached its peak in testing. We are talking about one who is still learning to walk under these regulations. Furthermore, the reliability allowed long programs to be run without interruptions. That means Ferrari accumulated data while others were still understanding specific problems. In pre-season, whoever understands their car the most usually starts the championship one step ahead in development. And here the psychological element appears. Hamilton is not selling euphoria. He is not declaring that everything is perfect. You are being critical. It is demanding more grip, more clarity and sensations. But while he does it, the stopwatch backs him up. That creates a very powerful internal narrative. When a driver finds speed before he feels comfortable, the moment when the two things align is often explosive. And when that happens in Formula One, the surprise stops being a test anecdote and begins to seem like a real threat. The third day in Bahrain did not end with fireworks. It ended with something much more dangerous, a sensation in the paddock. Not from euphoria, not absolute superiority, but of potential content, because when you coldly analyze what Ferrari did on this last day, the conclusion is disturbing for its rivals. They had reliability, they had a method, they had competitive times within normal work programs, and all this with a driver who was not satisfied with the grip. That changes the narrative completely. If the SF26 can already place itself at the top of the table while it is still fine-tuning its corner exit balance and polishing that delicate second half, then the room for improvement is not theoretical, it is tangible. The car does not appear to have hit its ceiling in testing. Furthermore, Ferrari does not seem to have emptied the tank or unleashed the full potential of the engine map. The fast laps came in the context of work, not in a desperate attempt to lead headlines. That leaves a question floating in the air. How much more is really in store? The concept of the car is consistent with the 2026 standards, especially in energy management, where the delivery seems more linear and cleaner than in other packages. And under these regulations, efficiency in the transition between regeneration and acceleration is pure gold. It's not just about downforce, it's about how the car constructs the full lap. Ferrari has built a stable foundation. You have validated parts. It has accumulated mileage. You have understood your car. And it has a pilot who is acting as the full developer of the project. That means that when the first real evolutions arrive, when that correlation is already completely closed, the jump may be faster than that of other teams that are still trying to understand their operational window. We didn't see a perfect car. We did not see a completely satisfied Hamilton. In fact, we heard clear criticism about the level of grip and the complexity of the regulation. But as those words came to light, the stopwatch told another story. Solid pace, consistency, clean mileage, and disciplined technical execution. Ferrari was not the team that looked for the easy starter. He was the one who validated pieces, closed correlations, and worked in silence. They repeated configurations, adjusted wing and ground, better understood their operating window. That's not a show, it's construction. And the really important thing is this: the SF26 still does not seem to be at its optimal point, especially in corner exit and rear stability. However, the times are already there. That means performance is coming before the car is fully tuned. Subscribe to continue uploading more of that content. Now you really think about all this.